Good morning again. All right, so a few months ago we were together, and if your memory serves you well, much better than mine, maybe you remember that I gave you a certain illustration about 4 groups of people. Those in a sea, those on a beach, on a cliff, and far, far away in the land. Now, on that Sabbath, we were talking about us, mostly, that are in the water, people who are spiritual, religious, however you want to define them. But today I would like us to think about people that are on that cliff, who are looking at us sometimes, looking at God, looking at religion, looking at spirituality, and they're not sure if they want to be part of that. Now I'll share some experiences that I had with that group of people, but oftentimes, and I really feel that sometimes we need to address this in church, oftentimes, even we who are sitting here, some of us, we feel like those people on a cliff. We have certain questions that we still didn't get answers to. We sometimes feel that although this is all nice, we seek for something more meaningful, something deeper. And sometimes, from Sabbath to Sabbath, from week to week, from day to day, we feel that this is not it. We need to experience something more. So sometimes maybe we will have our brothers and sisters, and maybe you feel like that today, that you have these difficult questions, that you maybe have certain skepticism from time to time, or certain ideas about God that are difficult to understand. So in a way I would like to address this. Now, since I come from Serbia, we have a bit different educational system in Serbia. So primary school lasts for 8 years, from when you're 7 years of age until when you're about 15 years of age. And then the secondary school from 15 to 19 years of age, roughly. So when I was finishing my primary school, I really had a good group of friends. Now, to be honest, they didn't have the best habits in the world. They liked to smoke. They didn't drink at that time so much, but they discovered their God at that time. And the God was called marijuana. So they liked to try that. And to be honest, they loved it. I mean, we spent quite some time together. My mom would always tell me, mothers, you can't imagine how difficult it is. You know that your son is, friends with guys who are using marijuana, and then you're thinking, well, is my son also doing that? So I always had to tell to my mom, I don't even want to come close to that. It's just that they're my friends. But we had some great conversations, some fun, but some meaningful conversations as well. So when the primary school was finishing, we were all together at my home, and my mom came to us because we were really good friends. And she told us this: remember this, guys. Few years after you finish your primary school, it would be like you never knew each other. It is going to be like you never knew each other. And we, of course, laughed at that. We were like, no way, we are going to be friends forever. Now, reality came, and really, that is one of the difficult points of our children, especially when you understand that the parent was right. It is difficult in a way, but she was right. So a few years after that, it was basically we lost any contact. So when I started my studies in theology, I felt this need to reconnect with my friends. And I called them. I was studying in Belgrade. They were in another city where we grew up. And I set up the meeting, like, let's meet up together. So 3 of us met. And we all went quite different ways. One of my friends, he really got into deep troubles with drugs. The other guy, he was doing great. He was doing his university degree in architecture. And we had 3 different stories, completely different stories. So we were sharing what's going on. And I told them this. They asked me, well, Danilo, what would you like, to do in life? And I'm like, well, I'm studying theology now. And what I would love to do is to go to China or to India and to preach about Christianity to those people over there who a lot of them don't know about it. And honestly, that was my desire in my first year of my BA studies. So this friend of mine, he looked at me and he told me this. He's like, are you serious? Who are you to go to their country and to preach your Christianity to them? And I was shocked. He never approached me like that. So we discussed about it, but I'm sharing this with you, I really honestly thought about it. Who are you to go and share your Christianity with them? They're fine without Christianity. His question basically had this background saying, well, Christianity brought a lot of damage worldwide, so why would you want to make damage to them, in a way? So that was the background of the question. Skeptics. People who look at Christianity, who look maybe at you, and they ask these questions. Why do you exist? They have this feeling that the world would be a better place if there was no Christianity. Have you experienced people like that? I was just reading the survey last week about religion in Britain, and the numbers are just decreasing. How many people declare themselves as Christians? Is it Church of England, or is it Catholic, is it Protestant? Never mind. The numbers are really increasing really significantly. So we live in a country that is really secular. And a lot of people ask these questions, well, what's the point of Christianity? That's the old story. And when we look through the history, it seems that it didn't bring a lot of good stuff. Now, this is a challenge that we have today. And I would like to go with you together to this chapter of John, where Jesus is actually meeting with one skeptical woman. I would like us to read this story today from a bit different angle, maybe. And we are going to see how she reacted to some of the words of Jesus. Now, two problems that we have, leave your Bibles open, so it's going to be John chapter 4. Two problems that we have sometimes when we think about skeptics and Christianity, it's a twofold issue. Number one is, even though they like to ask difficult questions, very often they don't accept all the answers. So even though they have good questions and difficult questions, they're not willing to accept all the answers. They have certain expectations. They have certain worldview that they live in, and they expect those questions to fit into that worldview, oftentimes. That's the first problem that we are facing. The second problem is that skeptics can be right. Now, what does that mean? What would you say? What are the most common arguments that skeptics are using against Christianity? So why Christianity is bad? Number one, I would say throughout the history is crusades. Because so much death and violence was brought to far countries because of promoting Christianity. And people are saying today, well, that was just wrong. Then again, you also have issues of papal political power in Middle Ages. Generally, Middle Ages are as dark ages against science and all the stuff that was progressing the way of life in a way. Then again, racism. A lot of blame is put on religious people because of racism. Intolerance today as well. I mean, so many things that they're listing. Even misuse of money. I don't know if you're familiar with John Oliver's show. I never watched it. It's a guy from Britain who went to America, and he is running a very popular show that is completely skeptical about everything, and of course about Christianity. But the thing that people liked with that show is, in a way, he's pointing to the tough but the right questions sometimes. And he is pointing to some things that Christians are doing badly, like manipulation to get the money from. You know that there are some pastors, especially in States, who use all sorts of manipulation within religion to get money. And we can't hide from that. That's reality. But then skeptics say, well, this is Christianity. So what would you say to that? I would say, I completely agree with you. I can't connect with that kind of Christianity neither. I can't connect with the Christianity that is promoting violence. I can't connect with the Christianity that is misusing people's money. That's not Christianity. And we are facing with the issue that there are people who call themselves Christians who are not bringing a lot of good to the Christian cause. Let me just quote you one thing. This is from a person who is saying that he is very, very conservative Christian, traditional Christian from America, very famous person called Donald Trump. Now, I don't know what your opinion about him is. I'm not going to go into politics today. But this is what happened when he approached Senate. And this is what he quoted from the Bible. So maybe you remember this. That was at the beginning of 2017. And that was his address at the Senate when soldiers were killed in Yemen in a secret operation, military operation. And there was in that Congress also one of the widows from a soldier who died at that secret operation. And he addressed her and the whole Congress. And of course, uplifting the sacrifice of that soldier. And this is what he said basically. The Bible teaches us that there is no greater act of love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Do you remember the quote? It's John chapter 15. Ryan, that was his name, laid down his life for his friends, for his country, and for our freedom. And we will never forget Ryan. And then there was this massive applause. But I have to ask you this. So you read the chapter 15 chapter of John, and you come to this verse. And let's not go into politics. But would you interpret these words of Jesus that he wanted basically to say, well, there is no greater act of love than to lay down one's life in a foreign country, in a secret operation, for American political purpose, and so on. Would you interpret those words like that? Jesus was talking about his death. And his death, that was self-sacrifice. No one else died. That was him laying down his life for all of us, and he didn't have to kill anyone. Now, not going into politics, but what the reaction were, it was basically saying, well, Bible is promoting American agenda. Bible is promoting the secret ops in foreign countries. So it seems that Christianity is supporting that kind of a worldview. Would you agree with that kind of Christianity? We are looking through the history and we see how many Christians misused a lot of biblical texts to promote their own agenda. And we have to agree sometimes with the skeptics saying, well, we can't connect with that kind of Christianity because that's not the Christianity that our Lord Jesus Christ preached. That's perversion of Christianity. Now, coming back to the story and coming back to those two issues that we have, what are we going to do when we are faced with a situation like this, when actually skeptics are right? Are we just going to defend by every means Christianity and all the decisions that were made in the history of Christianity that were apparently wrong? Or are we going to say, well, that's right, we have to actually apologize for those guys who've done misinterpretation of Christianity? Let me just give you a brief example. I was reading the book called Blue Like Jazz. I don't know if you came across that book. Wrote by Don Miller. And he had strange experience. He is not an Adventist. Some parts of the book, if you read it, they're a bit strange because we can't connect with that kind of Christianity also. But what's important? He was part of a small Christian group at a very, very secular university, college, in Portland. It's Reed University. I don't know if you know about that university. I only found out when I was reading the book. Now, what's interesting, according to his words, this is one of the most ungodly environments in America that he ever encountered. What does that mean? So once a year, they have a certain festival. When they close the whole university, security is not allowing anyone else to come there except for the students. And they have, for the whole weekend, wild parties all around the campus. Now, he and few of his friends who formed this Christian group, they sat together thinking, well, how can we minister to these fellow students of ours when they're doing this? And they were afraid because most of the people there, they're not even skeptics. They're enemies of Christianity. They don't want to know anything about it. And they were just thinking, what can we do for these guys? So there was this one suggestion. And just out of joke, he said to this friend of his, let's make a confession booth. A confession booth in the middle of the campus. So when people are doing all crazy stuff and, sinning and all of that, maybe they will feel this regret, and then this is the place where they could come so that they could confess what they've done. And he said that almost like a joke because he knew that that's going to be a disaster. But this friend of his, he was like, that's an amazing idea. Let's do that. He's like, no, man, you're crazy. I was just joking. No, we are going to do that. So tomorrow we have a meeting, our fellowship, and we are going to plan this. So tomorrow they came together. Friend of his, he's saying, guys, I know what we are going to do. Don suggested this, and it's an amazing idea. Don is like, no, please don't do it. We're going to get killed or something. So what actually was the twist? This friend of his was thinking about the idea of the confession booth. But he told them, but the booth is not going to be for their sins that they should confess to us. But it's going to be the booth where they're going to come and where we are going to confess the sins of Christianity that was done to them and throughout the history. And then they were sitting and thinking about that. I don't know what you think about that idea. But because most of the people at that university were always against Christianity because all the things that we listed, they recognized that they need to be real with these people. So the night came, it was wild all over the campus, and the first person came there drunk, a little bit skeptical and mocking them, but he asked them, like, guys, what are you doing here? You're crazy. So they told him, man, we are just here to say that we are sorry for all the things that Christians have done to you that you maybe hate God now. And he was like, really? Well, let me hear the story. I'm not going to tell you all of that. If you're interested, get a book maybe. But what was the epilogue of all of that? There was the queue, whole night through, of people waiting in line, waiting to hear this story and to share something with these guys. And that was the experience that was just amazing. And after that, that group actually ministered to most of the students in a very, very meaningful way. But they decided that they're going to be real. They're going to accept that criticism, that skepticism, and to say, yes, there was a mistake, of course, but that's not Christianity. That's not God. There is something more than that. I need to come back to this story with Jesus and Samaritan woman. So, John chapter 4. We read the verses, but let's start from the verse 7 just slowly again. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. Now, what is the answer of the woman? The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Now, I would like you to pay attention to her responses, more than Jesus' responses. So, from this, would you say that she was affirmative, that she was positive in this conversation? Would you say that? I would say it's difficult to say that because she is like, well, you're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan, and there is a division between us. So, who gave you right to ask me for a drink? She's not saying, yes, of course, sir, here you are. The Middle Eastern generosity and hospitality is known worldwide. Of course. No, she's saying, who are you to ask me for a drink? You are on that side and I'm here. So just recognize it at the beginning, this skepticism, this irony that she is giving. But then Jesus answers. And he says, if you knew the gift of God, and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Now let me ask you, when you read this, Is Jesus addressing the issue that she actually presented to him? Is he saying, well, I am a Jew and you're a Samaritan. Let me now describe the whole twist how we can actually communicate. He's basically not touching the issue at all of Judaism and Samaritans. No, he's basically offering the proper answer, the answer that he knows she is looking for. But slowly he is drawing her into the story. So basically he is saying, I can give you the water. This is a twist. Now she replies again, verse 11. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Again, what would you say? What's her response like? Is it positive or again a little bit skeptical? So maybe my reading is discovering already what I think about this verse, but basically she's saying, well, you have water to give me, but honestly, you have nothing to draw that water with. And are you really greater than Jacob? She has no idea who she's talking to. She's talking to that Jewish guy who had nerve to approach her, to communicate to her, and actually to ask her for the water. Really? And now he is saying that he has something more to give her than from that well where she is going every day. And generations of her grandfathers, they all came to that well. I mean, really? Who are you? Just recognize that skepticism behind. But then again, Jesus answers. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Jesus' answer is deep. But let me just go back to that. So is Jesus answering to her question? Well, what do you have to get the water, from? And are you greater than our father Jacob? Is he answering to that question? No. He's not interested in a way in that. He knows that there is a deeper issue behind. So, this is the first point. When we are facing skepticism, maybe sometimes in a church, maybe oftentimes outside of the church, that's just front face. It's not the issue. It is just an issue on the surface. What Jesus knew, he knew what was the deeper issue. And he wants to give her the right answer, because the answer, difference between Jews and Samaritans, how are you going to get water? No, that's not the right question, basically. And you're not going to get the right answer. So he is getting her even deeper. And then she is replying again. So he told her, I have this living water to give you for the eternal life. Verse 15. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. Let me ask you again, what kind of answer is this? Positive? Skeptical again? So she's listening to this verse from Jesus, and what's her reply? Well, I don't want to be thirsty again, so yeah, please give me that. And more importantly, I don't have to walk every day to the well, back home, just give me that water. She still doesn't get it. She still doesn't get it what's going on here. But what's amazing is actually that Jesus recognizes her questions, where she's coming from. And he's not saying, listen, woman, it's just a stupid question. No, he's not saying that. He's not saying, don't talk to me like that. You have no right to talk to me like that. Do you know who I am? I'm Son of God. He didn't say all of that stuff. He actually came and talked to her, and he engaged in that play of words and statements in a way, getting her deeper and deeper. So this is important for us as Christians. Oftentimes, when we face these skeptical issues, sometimes maybe we are afraid, sometimes we think that the devil sent them, sometimes we just look at them like enemies and all of that, and we don't want to have almost anything to do with that. But Jesus gave us a good example here. He's not afraid of that kind of a people. He's not afraid to engage in a conversation that he knows is a difficult one in a way. He knows that that person is not very much friendly to him, but he wants to take her deeper. And this is the call for us as well as Christians. Even though we are facing enemies, even though we are facing tough questions, skepticism, irony, it's not a reason for us to withdraw and to say, well, you have to sort out those kind of questions and answers, and after that you can come to me and we can talk. No, we need to engage like Jesus did. So that's the first point. The second point. Then, what was the turning point in this conversation? What happened? What did Jesus say that she actually started receiving what he is saying? Well, it's the continuing of the story. What was Jesus' answer to the verse 15 when she told him, give me the water so that I'm not thirsty and that I don't have to go to the well? Did he say, well, because this is an honest question and request, here is the water? No, he actually said, go call your husband and come back. Now, let's be honest. If a person came here to the church today, and we are maybe witnessing to the person, and at the end, that person is saying, listen, I really want to have that what you're offering. Would you say to that person, well, go home and get your husband here? Knowing that she is maybe divorced or that she was in adultery or whatever. Would you say that? I'm not sure. We would be really glad that the person wants to be part of us and that we can do the Bible study and all that. But Jesus was going deeper in the root of the issue. And after that, we are not going to read all of this, but then she says, oh, I see that you're a prophet, and this is the twist now. And after that, she is listening to Jesus fully. And after that, when Jesus says, well, I am the one who came from heaven, and I'm the one who is basically Messiah, she runs off to her village, and she witnesses to other people. What happened here? What was this twist that happened in her mind, that she's not anymore skeptical, and, with all that enemy kind of approach? Jesus showed her something that she experienced almost as supernatural in a way. She needed to experience, obviously, a prophetic gift, approach of Jesus. Now, this is a tough one for us sometimes. If we are going to engage in conversation with skeptical people, if we are just going to argue with each other, there is not going to be transformation. Just exchanging certain arguments and reasons and biblical texts and scientific and all of that. What people actually need to experience is something much more than a human reasoning. And this is what Jesus offered her. Prophetic vision. Now, we as Adventist people, we have that. And we have to recognize that we have a message that is a prophetic message. But let's go even further from there. This doesn't mean that, whenever someone comes to your church, you have to heal them or to, cast demons out or something like that. There is something that people are looking for that is much more than this horizontal level between you and me. They want to experience God fully. So instead of us being just a church who knows the Bible well, who knows all the arguments well, we have to be the church also that manifests God's power in a meaningful way to the people who are actually seeking for that. Even though in front they may see us skeptical, as enemies and all of that, but deep down they want to experience the real living God. And if we as Christians, if we don't have that to offer, we are nothing better than the University of Oxford, Cambridge, or whoever else. They're even better than us, in a way. They have the knowledge, they have the arguments, they have the books and all of that. But if we don't have the power, the transformation is not going to happen. So this is what we need to give to this world. But then there is the third thing. So the first thing is, we shouldn't be afraid of this engaging in the conversation, and we should also recognize sometimes that they are right. The second thing is, we have to be an example of God's power in this world. If we don't have that, the message is not going to go to them in a meaningful way. But then there is this third thing. What was the reaction from disciples? And this is one of the challenges that I see sometimes we as a church have, at least where I lived and worked. So when Jesus was done with the conversation with the woman, when she ran off to minister to other people about him, verse 27 says, "Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But no one asked, 'What do you want?' or 'Why are you talking with her?'" Now, in the background of this question that John is actually showing us, we see what was the normal way that people, especially Jews, at that time viewed that conversation between a Jewish man and a Samaritan woman. In their mind, this was a natural question. Hey, why are you talking to her? She shouldn't be here. You're a holy man, and she is a Samaritan. She should be way, way, way far from you. Now, this is something that I need to share with you that I've experienced in a church. That sometimes, not all the people, not all the churches have this kind of approach. That person doesn't belong here. That person should be better or different to come here. Now, I had few experiences with that. But the first one was really a difficult one. So I started my internship as a pastor at that time, way, way long ago now in 2008. And it was a lovely church, lovely community, similar maybe to yours, a little bit smaller. They knew each other for years. It was a lovely atmosphere. But I really prayed to God that I want to see, the meaning of my ministry. I want to see that God can reach other people through me that are outside of the church. So one day, I went to the church because the flat was just next to the church, and I prayed. I prayed honestly like never before, that God gives me this experience, that He can connect me in a way with a person who is seeking Him. When the prayer was done, it lasted about an hour. I went to the flat, and after less than 10 minutes, someone rang at the main gate. It's the middle of the day, in a way, morning. Usually, church members don't come at that time, and I was a little bit puzzled, who is this now? I opened the door, and there was a guy. There was a guy a bit taller than I am, a bit bigger than I am. Now, you have to know, in Serbia, Adventist church is not viewed very positively, because a traditional church has a lot of negative attitude toward any other church that is not the traditional church. So basically, all the other churches are sects, and they're dangerous for the society and all of that. So I know that this is in the background. So when I saw this guy, I thought, oh, here's the trouble. But luckily, it wasn't the trouble. He asked me, he's like, is this a church? Because when you look from outside, usually churches in Serbia, they don't look like churches, mostly like houses, regular houses. He's like, is this a church? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, well, I found you online, your address, and I came to ask you, can you help me to find Jesus? And in my mind, I had this prayer that I had just like 10 minutes ago. And inside of myself, I was jumping out of joy. But I'm like, okay, let's try first, to give this guy what he needs. And I'm like, well, would you like to come in and we can talk? And he had difficult experiences, but I didn't know at that time what was really the big issue. So actually, he started coming to church for every meeting that we had in a church. We started having Bible studies and all of that. It was a great experience. But then, because it's not a big town, people asked a little bit about him, because it doesn't happen every day that someone just comes at your church like that. And it came that this guy was struggling with a deep issue of being a pedophile. He never practiced it, but counselors actually recognized that. I don't know what would you do at that time when you knew that person with that kind of issue came to your church. So the members came to me and they said, listen, Danilo, this is a potential danger because we are not feeling safe having our children and him at the same place. So I tried in a way, to talk to them. Let's find a way. This guy is searching for the answer. This guy is searching for Jesus because apparently nothing else worked. After that, I talked to him as well, and he basically said that he never did anything, but he is struggling with this inside of him, and he wants to be free from that. He was attending our church for maybe the next 3 months, and in a way, approach that church had toward him led him to go to look for another church. And I'm just sharing this as my failure, to be honest. I didn't know what to do with this guy. I didn't know how to help him or heal him in a really deep and meaningful way. Because I can't do that. Church struggled with that because church couldn't do that. And sometimes we don't know what to do with these challenging people. People that have issues that we find really, really difficult to face. But they want to have someone on their side who is actually helping them and supporting them. It's a difficult one. I don't know what would you decide to do as a church, to be honest. I don't know if you had similar issue like that. But let's go back just to this, what was going on here. Disciples recognized that this woman shouldn't be there with Jesus. It's not her place to be there with Jesus. It's just the wrong thing. No one said anything to him because it was Jesus. But deep inside of them, if that woman came to them, not to Jesus, I believe that we would have a different story. So when we have people who are seeking, who really, really need God to transform their lives, are we really the community that can find a meaningful way to give them the proper answer, the proper approach, and in a way to be ministers of healing? So 3 things for us to think about. And maybe you'll get to some different answers. But when we are facing these challenging people, and they can have all sorts of colors, shades, and practices, can we agree that we shouldn't be afraid to engage? To engage in conversation and to engage in actually going on to be part of their journey also, in a way. Can we also recognize that sometimes we as Christians, maybe not we, but generally as Christians, that we did make mistakes with helping people, with doing all sorts of wrong stuff during the history of Christianity, and actually then trying to give the right version of Christianity to people? Then also, can we recognize that we should be the community that is manifesting God's power in healing all sorts of issues? We are not just directed toward the physical healing. We know that God is much more, in a way, interested in spiritual healing, because that's the healing for eternity. And then in the end, when we are faced in a reality, as a community, with a person coming through this door with the deep and serious issues, do we as a community have already the perspective, what should we do? Or is this the challenge that we should accept and then try to find a way to work around that? So, coming back to this story between Jesus and the Samaritan woman and disciples, it has amazing, amazing twist. Because in the end, it really is not just about us. How capable are we to give to people what they actually need? Because our witness is going to be our version of Christianity. What does that mean? If I preach you my version of Christianity, maybe it's going to be wrong. Maybe it's going to be destructive, because it's my version of Christianity, even though I'm trying to do the best thing in the world. And maybe what you want to give me is your version of Christianity, how you understood certain texts and all of that. And then sometimes people are going to get confused, because you know what the figures are saying? Today we have 41,000 denominations, Christian denominations worldwide. Numbers go up and down, but over 40,000, really? 40,000 versions of Christianity. It's just crazy. So whoever is a skeptical person out there, they're going to be confused. But the great thing here is, even though we may fail sometimes as individuals, maybe sometimes even as a church, in giving the people what they actually need, this is the best witness in John chapter 4, verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And what was her testimony? He told me everything I've ever done. Why was this important to her? Let's go back to what we said before. It was the prophetic vision that Jesus gave to her. And she needed that for the transformation. So she ministered to people saying, well, he told me everything that I've ever done. That was her most important message that she got from Jesus. But then we read forward. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. Just recognize this. So first we had the witness of a woman, and now we have witness of Jesus himself. And then they said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. No matter what our witness is, no matter if it's good or bad or whatever, in the end, if people come to Jesus in an honest way, seeking the right answers, the deep issues to be resolved, Jesus is going to actually give it to them. And this is the good news for us. Even though we may fail, Jesus is not going to fail. Even though our role is sometimes difficult, we represent God in this world. And even if we fail in that, God is not going to fail in actually manifesting himself in the best way possible. So dear church, brothers and sisters, we have this amazing mission. We have amazing calling. We have amazing message. Our message is really great. And sometimes we do an amazing job in preaching that message. Sometimes we could do a little bit better. But the point is, it's not just the message. It's not just us. It's actually God who is reaching to people and transforming their lives. And I believe that we are here today because we have experienced that. God who is part of your life. Not just because you heard a sermon or your parent or friend talking about that God, but because God has manifested himself to you. And I would love that this day today is going to be the refreshment of that manifestation of God in your life. Amen. Amen.